This is the Carrie Harrison Files. CarrieHarrison.com.
Carrie Harrison with you, your new best friend. Welcome to this new time slot as we have moved and expanded everything on the station. I brought Bobby Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., onto KPFK, our mothership station here, a number of years ago. I think it's about 10 years ago, through a show. And he was on the side of clean water and air and really championing things that are valuable to most people, and then had a sudden change of heart. Obviously, it's hard to get real fans when you're somewhere on the center of things. People just go, well, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to not pollute the water, so you don't get applause for doing the right thing. But some of us have larger appetites. And when the fan base is on the other side, where you can do the opposite, the inverse, and tell them it's good, like Orwell, war is peace, up is down, cold is hot, it really works. And you suddenly get a giant fan base and you get escalated up into a world of madness. So while I did bring him on, those were the good days. I cannot take responsibility for what's happening today. Well, I want to welcome me, you, everyone else to a world of political theater that is so absurd, so drenched in double dealing and bureaucratic bungling that it'd be comical if it weren't so catastrophic. The latest act in this tragic farce, the Trump administration, in its infinite wisdom, issued and then rescinded a sweeping order to freeze federal funds, throwing the country into a panic and leaving the states scrambling to access basic programs like Medicaid and Head Start. The White House memo, and it was done through a memo, kooky as it was audacious. It amounted to a government shutdown by decree, which is, by the way, illegal. Remember, we left the King of England. There would never be such a decree. There could never be with a balance of power. But there was a decree. While it was illegal, while it was unconstitutional, it certainly worked, at least a little bit. And if we're being honest, it's wholly predictable. Yet, despite this memo's hasty retraction, they did unpause it. That's because the court stepped in. The damage still has been done. And that's the problem. The administration still clings to its broader mission to withhold funding from anything it deems a threat to its ideological purity. Whether that's so-called Marxist equity or transgender rights. I mean, there's transgenders on every corner. They're in your room probably right now, right? It's just the worst. I mean, please. How about FEMA? FEMA disaster aid for the wrong sorts of people. That's been stopped. Or the dreaded windmill on some farmland when a beautiful oil derrick would glow like a reflecting rainbow at sunset. Meanwhile, the American taxpayer, you and me, that much abused beast of burden, is left bewildered, exhausted, uncertain about which services are going to exist tomorrow and which are going to be yanked out from underfoot like a cheap carnival rug. Poor grandma, stripped of her Social Security, which she paid into for 7 decades, and maybe relegated to eating little Friskies from the 99-cent store. You think she feels bait and switched? Joining us now is Karen Dolan, director of the Criminalization of Race and Poverty program at the Institute for Policy Studies. She's been watching the reckless gambit unfold in real time, and she warns us this isn't just incompetence. It's a calculated effort to cause chaos, keeping the public too disoriented to be able to fight back as their hard-earned tax dollars are funneled into the pockets of billionaires. I know, it's real. It's today. It's now. Karen Dolan, welcome to the Carrie Harrison Files.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
And thank you for doing what you do. I was just saying to Dr. Scott Ratson minutes earlier, these are acts of bravery. A month ago, maybe not. Today, right now, acts of bravery. Anybody who stands up, even slightly resistant to this stuff, has crosshairs painted on their back. That would be you. Let's talk for a second about this memo. I'm sending a memo for the White House to freeze funding that another branch of government decided. Was it sheer incompetence or a deliberate attempt to stoke confusion and fear?
I think it was both. The memo was very poorly and vaguely written. I think that the incompetence behind that was quite clear, but it did achieve its objective, which was to sow chaos and confusion. The way it was written in such vague and sweeping terms made it sound as if nearly every government program on the discretionary side of the side of the budget that Congress approves funding for, was at risk.
So even though the freeze was rescinded, which it was, they backpedaled and said, oops, just kidding. What dangers still loom for American families?
Yeah, I think it's important to sort of dig into that a little bit. So the initial memo said, "Hey, we're freezing everything," and there was a list with 2,600 programs that were potentially on the chopping block, that have to report if they comport with Donald Trump's vision of a white supremacist society. And there was a footnote in the memo, a small footnote in small letters, that said that Medicaid and Social Security and programs that directly benefit individuals were exempt. But what directly benefit individuals means was undefined and is not a legal phrase. And so that potentially would sweep up everything. Then they issued a clarification, because panic was just widespread, not just, of course, with Democrats, but with Republicans, with everybody who receives any help from the government, which includes infrastructure and disaster aid and our roads and bridges and federal aviation control. And so the clarification was, well, it's just a certain number of programs. It's not all these programs that you're saying. The clarification was nonsensical. So immediately a lawsuit was launched, and a judge put a stay on that sweeping order until it could be figured out what they meant. And then immediately the White House press secretary put out a tweet that said, just kidding. We rescinded the memo, but we're not stopping the freeze. And so another judge stepped in and said, that's not cute. That's not funny. That's dangerous. And on behalf of 22 states in the District of Columbia, he's issuing another stop action to prevent those funds from being frozen.
It's like being in the ICU and somebody pinching your tube, just pinching it so the liquid doesn't flow through for, I don't know, 20 seconds, and then undoing it and saying, just kidding. You
That's
could
right.
perish.
And that is what happened even with these programs that were supposedly exempt, like Medicare. All 50 states reported that during the time on Tuesday when this memo was in effect, that they were unable to access funds through the portals for Medicaid. And the same was reported for disruptions in Head Start, which is childcare, and food for seniors, and education, and after-school programs, and across the board, the programs that were supposed to be exempt. In fact, the access to those much-needed funds was disrupted during that day.
Carrie Harrison with you. This is the Carrie Harrison Files, carrieharrison.com. We're also live streaming on every video platform right now. Just Google Carrie Harrison and up it will come, along with whatever your favorite streaming platform is. We'll also have archives. You can get our free newsletter at carrieharrison.com, where you can get you'll get a transcript of this conversation, other things that we cannot include or do on the radio while we're still allowed to be on the radio. I don't say that as an empty threat. We have been targeted specifically in Project 2025. This station targeted specifically and named. And as of yesterday with the New York Times, all public radio and PBS are in the crosshairs of them trying to figure out how to make it go away. All that to say, we're going to bring on the heroes, bring on the people who are brave, who are fighting to bring out information that you need critically, like Karen Dolan, who we're speaking to right now, director of the Criminalization of Race and Poverty program at the Institute for Policy Studies. And we're talking about the federal funding freeze and how it affects you and me. And she's warning this isn't just incompetence, it's a calculated effort to cause chaos, keeping the public too disoriented to fight back as their hard-earned tax dollars are funneled into the pockets billionaires. Karen Dolan, let's go like 2 layers deeper. White supremacist nation. We all can sort of nod and go, yep, But what does that actually mean? Because there are people who are going to go, what's wrong with that? Well, there's plenty wrong with that because it becomes a monolithic society. What is wrong with that?
Well, I mean, on its face, a country that is only for white males with billions of dollars, and
It's a small lunch table.
yes, and wives and lots of children, would be an untenable society, and a society without a workable government, civil servants, and just regular families who are not billionaires. Of course, wouldn't work. So on the face of that's terrible. But really, if you look at the reality, the heroes are all of the American people because we will all be affected by shutting down government. So the programs that are still on the chopping block, and those include Social Security and Medicare, people should not be fooled. It isn't just through federal funding, it isn't just through executive order that Trump and the Republicans are trying to take away funding. It is through the budget, it is through funding the government. So all of these programs are on the chopping block, and we will all be affected. As I said, from disaster aid to transportation to healthcare to food to housing to education to everything that makes up our daily lives. That is all precariously at risk. And why? To free up money for tax cuts for Donald Trump, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and all the billionaires who want to line their pockets with our taxpayer dollars.
So just being an English major, not a math major. In fact, I have to hire people to do simple math for me. I don't think in terms of balancing with numbers, but this is a balancing act. If you're going to cut trillions in taxes, it has to be paid for by money from somewhere else. That money, if it's being spent on programs like Medicare, on Social Security, on people's retirement, on food for old ladies, on Band-Aids, medicine, FEMA, et cetera, you've got $1 trillion being spent for the public. You unspend it for the public, it balances the tax cuts you've just given your buddies, and basically it's a wash, except that people get hurt.
That's right. So the tax cuts are projected to cost about 5 trillion over the next 10 years, and they go overwhelmingly to the top 0.0001%. This is not you and me. This is not the people who think that they have, a couple of $1 million maybe net worth per year, or some retirement fund with a couple $1 million in it. They're not the ones who are going to benefit. It's the ultra rich, the uber rich. There's a big difference between $1 million and $1 billion. I'm not sure everybody understands that. And the only way you can get 5 trillion to pay for this is to cut virtually everything else. So there's no way you can get that money, even by cutting just all the programs that we rely on that's in the so-called discretionary budget that is approved every year by Congress. You have to also take from the mandatory budget, which is the Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So most of Americans rely on one or more, and usually several, of these programs. And to have them cut is incredibly destabilizing. And the only thing it does is help the very rich get richer, and the rest of us sicker and more suffering and more death.
Finally, Karen Dolan, how can we, citizens, listeners, viewers here on the Carrie Harrison File, what can we do to cut through the noise and misinformation to understand what's really happening?
Make sure that your lawmaker, regardless if they're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, at all levels, at your local level, at your state level, at the federal level, know that you do not want these services cut. The cuts to these services across the board, Republican and Democrat, are hugely unpopular. It's like 80% of American people do not want cuts to these programs. And they also tax cuts for billionaires are exceedingly unpopular. So your lawmaker has to feel that pressure. Republican lawmakers also freaked out with the Trump memo on Tuesday, and that's part of the reason that they rescinded it, because Republican lawmakers also have people in their districts that rely on roads, bridges, health, housing, disaster aid, everything. Everybody relies on everything, so that it shouldn't be a partisan issue, but you have to make your voice heard. You must do that. And keep in mind, just because this memo was rescinded and there are some lawsuits temporarily staying the freeze, this is going to the Supreme Court. This is the purpose. The Trump administration is trying to take back the power from the legislative branch and vest it only into into his hands. Unconstitutional, illegal. Who knows what will happen at the Supreme Court with the kind of supermajority he has. So we have to stay vigilant, or we will lose what we know of as life at present.
I remember President Obama. This is back in the, it was another century, it feels like anyway. President Obama saying that, I could do what everyone wants, but I have to have your back. I can't just unilaterally declare that I'm going to do this. If you guys want it, I'll do it. But I have to have your back, or you have to have my back in order to do it. And I think with our politicians, at least the way our system is set up, whether it's blue or red or purple, it doesn't matter, is that these people are out there doing stuff, whether you like it or not. But if they think they have sufficient backing, they'll stand on their head, stand on their pinky, whatever, drive a Tesla, not drive a Tesla. It doesn't matter if they think that you have their back. So if we show up and suddenly really magnify our intention and our desires to even the crappiest of politicians, they work and exist and get paid at the pleasure of you and me, letting them think that they have our support. So let's go ahead and tell them what to do, even more than we ever have. Is there a shortcut to that, Karen Dolan, that you know about? Is with modern technology and digital, does it matter?
Well, I mean, you can go on to your local congresspeople's website to find their telephone number, and different organizations have ways that automatically send out letters. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head which one, because they're often, contained by different subject areas. But it isn't just one subject area that we need to talk about. We need to talk about all of them. And you need to write letters to your editor. You need to tell your neighbor, your family members, what's really happening. So a lot of people are just taking at face value that Trump is trying to streamline government. Streamlining government is getting rid of the civil service workers that make sure we get our Social Security checks, that make sure we have enough air traffic controllers in the booth so that collisions don't happen, that make sure that there are doctors to take care of us, that there are roads that we can drive on, that our children can go to school. When you defund that, you lose that. So people have to stop listening to the campaign rhetoric that somehow this administration has your back by streamlining government. It is not having your back when you destroy government and all of the programs that we rely on to be safe and happy and that our families and our children need. So we've got to cut through the confusion. We've got to cut through the BS, the campaign promises that are spoken in simple words to dupe people. Let's not be duped anymore. Let's understand what's at stake and say, no way.
Let's not be duped anymore. That's a great book title. I'm so grateful that you've been here today with us, Karen Dolan. You're director of the Criminalization of Race and Poverty program at the Institute for Policy Studies. And we've been talking about the federal funding freezes. And you're warning us that this isn't just incompetence, but a calculated effort to cause chaos. keeping us too disoriented to be able to fight back. But you just told us how to do that. Get back into action. Stuff that in the 1980s was normal, in the 1990s was normal. People did write their Congress people. People did reach out and they were involved in civics. Here we are again, except this time it's existential. This time it really matters. It's not just a comfort, it's a literal survivability. What's your website so people can check you out, Karen?
ips-dc.org. And people should realize Congress people, even Republicans, take it seriously when their offices are flooded with letters and calls. They do take it seriously. We need to take our own civic responsibility seriously.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I very much appreciate it. Carrie Harrison with you. This is the Carrie Harrison Files. We're going to pause for a second, and then we're going to unpause, just like the Trump administration. When we return, we're going to open up the phones, be able to probably squeeze in a call or two at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. That's 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. I think you just press option 1 when you call in at 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Your thoughts on this and workarounds that you know about, and should we get involved in our civics at this time of life or death? Cures, thoughts, solutions, whatever you've got in mind, I want to hear it here on the Carrie Harrison Files.
This is the Carrie Harrison Files. CarrieHarrison.com.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call Low Cost Airlines. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call now.
Listen while it's still legal.
The Carrie Harrison Files.
And it is the Carrie Harrison Files. And I'm glad you're listening while it's still legal. It is still legal as of today. If you saw the New York Times yesterday and the day before, all public radio stations, that includes us, we here, including maybe some of our affiliates like K-Gay or KMEE in Palm Springs that are gay owned and operated. All of us are in the crosshairs right now. So hard to know how long legacy media will continue to be able to do its thing. So I want you to also get our free newsletter so we can stay connected and give you updates on what we learn is happening before it's published in things like newspapers days later, or they don't publish it because their advertisers won't like it. You can go to CarrieHarrison.com, CarrieHarrison, CarrieHarrison.com. Sign up for our free newsletter, where we're also going to give you transcripts so you can read the conversations and absorb it as you would like an ebook, which is better than if you're able to listen only for 10 minutes at a time, but you can get the whole and absorb the whole show, because we've had 2 critical pieces of information brought out today, along with my favorite thing, solutions. Solutions matter. Let's go to the phones at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. Say hello to Joey. Joey, you're on the Carrie Harrison Files. Hello, Joey. We can't hear you for some reason or another. We'll just put you on pause there. Wendell, unmute. Yes, Wendell in the control room. Please unmute.
Yeah.
Joey. There we go. I hear a voice.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
You can hear me? Yes.
Yes.
So this whole RFK Jr. thing, it's so fucking American.
Oh, whoa.
So fucking American.
Thank you. Wendell, I'm sure you
I
caught
know
that.
that's right.
So watch your language, please. Okay, you're gone. It probably would have been good, but we do have to be careful because we still are a regulated entity, unlike regular streaming and regular cable. So what we're dealing with right now, of course, is an issue where all of us are feeling the pause and unpause of the freeze. This is the hors d'oeuvre at week number 2. The entree is yet to come. The Key to this, and we knew this from Stalin, he referred to weeding the garden, which was removing services and basically purging millions of people that weren't, as the Germans pointed out, productive. So the German T4 problem, the German T4 problem during World War II, T4 for Tiergarten 4, was to get rid of people who the Germans said led burdensome lives. Why would you get rid of Medicare? Because who's on Medicare? People under the Trump administration, or the way they look at it, under the way that billionaires look at it, lead burdensome lives. In other words, they're not productive the way they would like people to be productive. They're not generating enough, so they actually need help from the government. This is why we have a government, by the way, so that we don't have massive homelessness. We have it massively, but not just everybody, so that we don't have people starving on the streets, or we don't have zombieism going on. So we do have these social services because it is true. Some of us, things happen, we get in a car accident, we can no longer function the way we once did, even weeks or months earlier. We do need help. That's what the services are for. You take them away because you declare that people are leading burdensome lives. It somehow seems like you're giving them a gift by just letting them self-exterminate. Why else would the Trump administration go on the CDC website and pull HIV meds, where 30 million people around the earth are taking HIV meds in one form or another to keep from spreading a rampant virus? You do that because you hope, if you're a billionaire, that they will simply self-exterminate. That's the plot of the play, and I want to leave you with that so you think about it and understand the reality of what's going on. Carrie Harrison with you. This is the Carrie Harrison Files. Don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter at carrieharrison.com, where we're going to keep you informed in what we know, plus give you transcripts and archives of this show and everything else. Also, you'll be able to get video archives as well as audio archives. And I appreciate your joining me today. And I know we got some great information out. We will have more to come as we bravely face these challenges of the day and suit up and show up for you for as long as we can. I look forward to seeing you next week, and have a great day.
Listen, well, it's still legal.
The Carrie Harrison Files.